Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Vinny Makes the Hall of Fame Case for. And I'm Kirk Buckner. I run NotInHallOfFame.com and the other sites, Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame, Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the United States Athletics Hall of Fame. I've got with me, obviously, the main man of the show, because it's Vinny Makes the Hall of Fame Case for, not Kirk. And Vinny's making the Hall of Fame Case for today. Oh, boy. Oh, boy, man. This is one of those ones where we're in a little bit of a disagreement here, but we've got a former running back, Tiki Barber.
Yes, indeed. He's the guy. He's my first ever star player of any kind that I became a fan of.
You were saying too, because we just recently did another one of your New York icons, David Wright. So it's sort of nice because one thing I love doing this show with you, Vin, is for a sports historian, for a sports fanatic like yourself, your fandom for teams is minor for the most part.
I'm more so with like certain players that I
Right.
kind of hold an attachment to. But I generally keep that on the down low because, as great as Tiki Barber may be, he doesn't hold the jock strap of Pud Scheffelfinger, but but there's already a case for him, so don't worry.
Okay, so with Tiki, here's I can argue that for a 3-year period, or maybe 3 to 4, the last 4 years of Tiki Barber's career, if you were to say that he was in the top 3 running backs in that era, I'd agree. In fact, I would make that case. I might even go so far as to say close to number 1. I imagine
Probably.
that is sort of a big part of where you're going with that. How many rushing titles? Was it 2 or 3?
Like he led the league in rushing. If I understand, he never led the league in rushing.
He did not. Okay, but he
No.
was pretty close. Was
He was usually pretty close. He was, especially that end of his career. Like, granted, earlier on in his career, he was a guy that was known for fumbling the ball a bit, but it wasn't until like
more
the
than a bit.
2000s.
More than a bit.
I'm being
Yeah.
facetious with it.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah,
But
but again, one of the things I look for, Vin, he does hit that box. Were you in the conversation, or were you the best at your position at one point in time in your career? I can look you dead in the eye and say, I think Tiki had a case for that. So when he was a semifinalist this past year, my visceral reaction was, because I think there's other more deserving running backs, Alexander Kamashon. But I understood that he fit one of my personal criterias.
mm-hmm.
My issue, and I'm a storyteller like yourself,
Right.
and I will never forget. And this is sort of where I saw a lot of this in real time, because this is where my age, because I'm old as shit and you are not. You are I'd say you're my young Padawan, but you're a far better historian than I will ever be. But still,
I'm flattered.
No, it's true. It's true. You are. I've said it before on the show. I will say it again. I will say it loud and proud. Vinny Lospinuso is a sports historian of all sports. It's incredible what you have dedicated your knowledge to learn, and I learned from you far more than you learned from me. Saying
Appreciate
that,
that.
no, and it's sincere and right from the heart. Saying that, I remember this man very clearly. I remember reading article upon article after he retired, and he retired throwing a lot of people under the bus.
I'm aware of that. They wouldn't stop talking about it during the New York tabloids because now when Tiki retired, he in a way his final game was David Akers field goal win. I was crying my eyes out in my room.
You
But
you would
fortunately,
have been
the
just
year,
a little kid then, no?
yeah, I was 7. Yeah, I was
7,
7 years
okay.
old,
All right, yeah.
and yeah, fortunately, the year afterwards it was okay because they got to win the Super Bowl without
Well, that's
Tiki.
when you were still a fan of teams, and then you sort
Yes,
of like went away from that, and
yeah, yeah,
and
that
that's
that's
where I'm
true.
going with this, right? Because here we have a guy who trashed Eli, so more or less said they're not going to win without me, or Eli can't win. Wasn't exactly kind to Strahan, who
No, and he
top
wasn't
defensive
kind.
player.
He was kind. He wasn't kind to Tom Coughlin either.
Right. And so you lose who at that point was their greatest offensive weapon, and then they win the Super Bowl.
Not just any against any team, but against a team that was that was so close to becoming perfect.
Right. So the narrative on Tiki, for me, and I think for a lot of people, is addition by subtraction. And when you leave and you're that good, and he was,
Yeah,
and then
and
they're better without you,
well, there's more than just that for his case. I mean, he's the only
sure.
guy in
But
like the top 20. What's this?
no, I said go ahead.
I said he's the only one. He's the only player in I think the top 25 of total rushing yards. I think he's like third all time in yards per carry. The only two being like Jim Brown and I believe like
Mhm.
one other person. Also, he's only one of four players in NFL history to have 5,000 or more rushing and 5,000 or more receiving yards in their career. The other three being Lenny Moore, Marcus Allen, and Marshall Faulk. Tiki Barber is that as well. He is someone who was very, very versatile in terms of how he was as a back. He could you could catch the ball when he needed to. He could run the ball when he needed to.
Okay.
But yeah, Tiki Barber for a long time was seen as this guy that, after he left, they won the Super Bowl, and of course they won a few years later, also against the Patriots. And he tried to see if he can get into TV. He didn't really do that much for NBC. It wasn't until his radio show a few years later, and now he's one of the big guys on CBS. With oh, oh yeah, Matt Ryan. He's with. It's like, what is this? A weird
Well,
childhood and adulthood pairing.
well, he also had a bit of an issue too with a personal scandal that held him back.
Well, yeah, his like cheating scandals, but I don't really
Yeah.
think too much about that.
Well, most
I
of
don't
us
like it.
don't. Ooh, an athlete
Yeah,
cheats on their wife. That never happens.
yeah,
But that's essentially
yeah,
why he left early. And again, props to any athlete who can leave early on their own terms, especially with
yeah.
their faculties and on straight. But I always think like the Giants went on to have the career he shouldn't have. His twin exceeded him and then became more successful in broadcasting.
Yeah, Ronde became. Oh wait, Tiki's on big on radio over here. For
Okay. But
WFAN, he got big in 2022. But now, even though as someone who likes to combine the careers of entire things with football, so like if I were to make a case for Don Meredith, I would throw his broadcasting times with ABC and his playing careers with the Dallas Cowboys, and that could be the same thing for someone like let's say like a Pat Summerall even, or even if it's
that's
not
a good one.
officially said, I combine John Madden's career. Tiki's not one of those guys that has enough of a strong enough broadcasting career where I could merge it, holistically like a Meredith, like a Summerall.
Mhm.
Because Barber a broadcaster, he's not even close to like their level. He was thinking if he could be guys. I mean, hell, I'd say that obviously Romo and Olsen have way exceeded that in terms of a combined career than Tiki. But
Well, Romo's on his way to a Hall of Fame broadcasting career.
I feel like
I
my
feel.
main issue. Well, we don't know. Well, I'm saying like I just wish that they can combine those into one with a bus.
Yeah, but they
That's
don't.
just well,
They don't.
hopefully they do. I'm
Well,
praying they do. I'm crossing fingers.
okay. When you run it, maybe that'll happen. Here's another knock on Tiki. His touchdown numbers are low, relatively speaking.
Yes. He's lower on the touchdowns. That's definitely a thing against him, but
And you've
hasn't
given me
hurt
a
him.
couple things to think of too, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he's a bit lower in terms of the touchdown, but he's not that low compared to Fred Taylor. And I have nothing against
Shouldn't
Fred
be
Taylor,
there either. Let's be
but
blunt.
listen, Fred Taylor is also there because he's 17th all time in rushing, which nothing against him, but I think in terms of like as a running back, he'd probably be the worst one in there. No, he would be the worst one in there. But
Oh, Vinny, I've got Tiki personally over Fred Taylor, so it's not an issue there. But I have Sean Alexander dwarfing both of them.
oh yeah, I think Sean Alexander as a running back is better than both of them. I mean, Sean Alexander won MVP, of course, and finished with a hundred rushing touchdowns.
Mhm.
I don't understand why that guy has not been a semifinalist yet, but that's besides the point. Nevertheless, Tiki Barber, Fred Taylor, Eddie George, and Ricky Waters have all been semifinalists that are eligible.
Mhm.
Taylor, of course, being a finalist this year, whereas Sean Alexander, Steven Jackson, Corey Dillon, even Priest Holmes have not been as fortunate. Barber has been someone to make it as a semifinalist. And even as someone who I'm looking at, the Hall of Fame monitor for uh, PFR right now, if you were to look at running backs for this, Tiki is actually sandwiched in between Larry Brown and Priest Holmes. Fred Taylor is just above Jamal Lewis and below Warwick Dunn and Priest Holmes. So in a way, you could argue, and Eddie George is below that. So maybe Fred Taylor could open the door for him, but I'm not too sure. Some
Ugh.
people could argue that I don't know. Some people could also feel like with so much in there, they just choose one and just move on. So I'm not sure how I feel
Yes,
about it
because
because there's
because the juggernaut that has been the Jacksonville Jaguars definitely is due another player.
it's kind of crazy too that the Jaguars are on the verge of getting more modern players than the Falcons, who have been around since the 60s. I'm just saying
I
that's
No
wow.
argument here, and it's not like Jacksonville's known for that wonderful fan base they have.
I mean, the Bengals have only had one player predominantly known for his time with the team that's made it as a modern. And Jim Brown made it, but he wasn't really there for them. And also Terrell Owens and Charlie Joyner, but they play for other teams. Ken Riley made it as a senior, and that was because the Bengals fans push as hard as they possibly can to make that happen. Jaguars fans, I don't really see them really push for Fred Taylor, maybe some, but I
I've
think I've
never
seen
met a
more
Jaguars fan. Do they exist?
Alec.
I
That's it. But with the Giants, and I became friendly with Gary Myers, but I don't think he would even be a semifinalist. And I'm happy he was, and I thanked him
Bingo,
for it. But
bingo, got it.
I don't think he would have been here if not for Gary Myers. And whether you like him or not,
Tell
like,
everyone who Gary Myers is, because not everyone listening might know who that is.
okay, for those that don't know, Gary Myers for a long time wrote for the New York Daily News and has been a long time voter for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He also has a powerful voice in that room, especially for the seniors. If it was not for him, Joe Klecko would not have happened. If it was not for him, I don't think Art Powell would have happened either. And also, if not for him, I don't think you would have seen Carl Banks or Otis Anderson be a semifinalist as seniors. And I don't think you would have seen Tiki Barber even be a semifinalist this year if not for the work of Mr. Gary Myers.
He has been very active on the X promoting said case. And
As he
whatever you
should.
think of,
I wish more voters did that. I've been trying to get Orlando Ledbetter. Hey, try to push for Jesse Tuggle or John Abraham, but he doesn't want to do it because, like, I think his contract at the Atlanta Journal Constitution prohibits that or something like that. I don't know.
I've had a reminds me of a conversation that I recently had with a certain individual in Atlanta.
But what do you think of it?
He was not as politically correct as you.
That that's yeah and yeah, people have their own issues with voters
Yeah.
for the right or the wrong reasons. I mean,
I'll,
everyone.
I'll say this though, Vin. as much as sometimes writers will annoy the shit out of me, Shaughnessy, comma Dan, for
Oh,
his,
yuck.
yeah, right, exactly. At least when you're vocal on who you're gonna do and what you're gonna do and how you're gonna do it, props out for putting that out there, knowing what toxicity could come your way.
Oh yeah, I've always had respect for Gary going back to when I was a kid reading Daily News. And in case you're curious, everyone watching, the New York Daily News doesn't even have any writers anymore. They just pull a bunch of Associated Press articles from across the country and throw it into a newspaper and call it a day.
What's a
It's,
newspaper, kids?
well, I know what it is because I get them every day.
Evan told me a story just because I thought this was really really funny. He had an intern a few years ago, and they said to the intern, "Okay, we need you to go get some stamps." She looked at him and said, "What's a stamp?"
Oh my God.
So yeah,
That's bad.
there you
Like, listen, I may be young, but that doesn't mean I don't know what are around me. But also going back with Tiki, when I was in Canton, like half of Rondé's speech was a Hall of Fame case for Tiki Barber. That was,
go. It's
and
also
as I'm,
his twin, so I mean, like he might have a little bit of bias there.
yes, but
I
everyone
love Ronde,
accused,
but yeah, go ahead. So
well,
I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
yes, but at the same time, those you get bias if a teammate pushes for you, or a friend pushes for you, or if someone in the area pushes for you.
There.
Yes, obviously, there's much closer of a bias as you're the identical twin. You're someone who you've been with your entire life, literally, in the case of Tiki and Ronde. But he wasn't saying anything wrong. Like he brought everything that was in favor of Tiki Barber for a case, and I think it was a really valid one. Tiki was there from beginning to end helping Ronde, and obviously Ronde wants to see Tiki in. I'm not sure if he's I don't think he's the best Giants modern or senior or even non-player in. I think, Del Schaffner or Jimmy Patton make better cases. Um,
Okay. What about
but
Connerly? Charlie Connerly?
oh,
I'm interested in that
absolutely.
one.
He should definitely be in also.
Okay.
He
Interesting.
he's also was a semifinalist this year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was.
In fact, he's sort of like the quarterback version of Bob Kuchenberg, where he's been a finalist so many times and yet he's still not in yet.
Not far off. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
considering.
like Kuchenberg has 8, Connolly has
Okay.
7.
Let me throw this out at you. Let's say Tiki hangs on one more year, keeps his ego in check, and is part of that Super Bowl team.
He'd be in
Are we
already.
even having this discussion, or is he already in if he just
I
plays
think he'd be
one
already
more
be
year
in.
with a
He'd be
1,500 yard year?
he'd probably already be in because I hate to say it, but a lot of the fans from outside New York have a big grudge against New York for obvious reasons, and I completely get that. Um, in fact, there are still some people not crazy, whether you like it or not, of Steve McMichael making it because Chicago. Um,
Yeah, but it's
but I mean,
Mongo. It's Mongo.
no, Mongo to me is always Alex Karras. You can't convince me otherwise.
You are the oldest soul I've ever met under 30. This is awesome. The fact that you knew a Blazing Saddles reference is incredible.
Yeah, I mean he was an actor, so of course.
Never mind
But
that shit. Here comes Mongo.
but yeah, but for Tiki Barber, I think if he held on for another, he'd already be in. I
Okay.
think he would be in over Fred Taylor. I think also Fred Taylor is a finalist this year because he's been a semifinalist so many times, and they're finally pushing him over. Which I'm happy for Fred Taylor. I
I'm
hope it
not.
opens the door for other running backs, but I don't know because they might say, okay, we're done with running backs and just throw them into the pool of the seniors, which mm, sad face.
Someone will have to explain that one to me, but okay. All good.
Yeah,
Either way, this has been another good episode. If you like everything that Vinny's doing, there are so many Hall of Fame cases that he's made. Not just football, some in baseball, basketball. Uh, you made a couple amazing ones in hockey. I think
yeah,
my latest favorite one that you did was on the Godfather of Black Hockey, James A.R. Kinney. Check that one out if you haven't. And sometimes he'll even do requests. He did a request for me. He did President Roosevelt, President Theodore Roosevelt, one of our early episodes that we did. And if you're thinking, Vinny, Kirk, you guys are nuts. No, no. Check that out, and you will see why a former president of the United States who's on Mount Rushmore is a big reason why you're enjoying every Sunday today.
Go watch it, guys. I
Yeah,
mean,
and Saturday too. Really?
if Abraham Lincoln's on in the Wrestling Hall of Fame, why not
Is he?
have Teddy Rose? Yeah, he is.
Well, look at that. I didn't know that. There
No,
you go.
now.
I do now. From the greatest sport. Yes, from the greatest. Yes, Winnie agrees. Winnie and Vinny are in total agreement here as to who is the greatest sports historian. But there's so many other things here in the Bucknerverse. Check all that out at notinhalloffame.com. Wherever you are, wherever you may be, make it a great day, because unless the Buddhists are right, or Marty McFly, this day's not coming again. Take care, everyone.